Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Shifty's 49ers Talk. It's your boy Shifty. This one's going out to Niner fans near far, NFL fans, sports fans. You are all welcome here. Before we get into today's video, I do want to give a big shout out to all the new subscribers. I've seen the subscriber count jump recently, so it's awesome to see that. Love the support. Also want to give a shout out to all the support from various 49er Facebook groups, 49erswebzone.com, and however else you stumble across the channel. Really appreciate all of it. So today we are going to be doing a draft retrospective, looking back to the 49ers 2020 NFL draft. We'll be grading each of the players. You're going to see the 49ers draft class on the screen right now. We'll go through each of those guys, talk about how their career's been so far, and then their potential moving forward. Overall, I do think it was a very, very solid draft for us. And without further ado, let's get into the first pick. To kick off the 49ers 2020 draft, we selected Javon Kinlaw, 14th overall, the defensive tackle from South Carolina. Now, how did we get this pick? Because you have to remember, we were just coming off our Super Bowl loss to Kansas City. So we traded away DeForest Buckner to the Indianapolis Colts for their 13th overall pick, and then we did trade back a spot with Tampa Bay. And ultimately, overall, with the 14th pick, we took Javon Kinlaw, who was essentially, I think the thought process was he would be a cheaper replacement than DeForest Buckner, who was due a massive contract. So overall, Javon Kinlaw, let's talk about him. He had a very solid rookie year. The stats really don't jump out at you. 1.5 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits. He did actually have 4 pass defended, so with his size, he really was quite effective, being able to jump up, get in those passing lanes, and block a few passes. Not only that, I think we all remember when he had that crazy interception, which led to a touchdown, which is just wild to think, you know. But overall, when he was out there, he was pretty good. When in 2020, he actually played, while healthy, played about 60 or so % of the defensive snaps. He missed a couple of games in 2020, and then last season, 2021, unfortunately, he missed most of the year with a lingering knee injury. 2021 was not a great year for Javon Kinlaw. Didn't really have any huge impact plays, was clearly struggling with the knee injury, which I think hampered him leading up to the season as well. He elected to get surgery. Hopefully, that will now lead him into being able to maximize his potential. I think Kinlaw does have a ton of potential. His size, his strength, his athleticism, for a guy that size is just wild to think about just what he can do. So he's in a great position to succeed here in San Francisco. You know, really nice defensive coordinator, D'Amico Ryans, who I think is going to be a head coach sooner rather than later. You get coaching from Chris Kasura consistently on the defensive line. Plus, he's surrounded by a lot of really talented guys. So the focus won't be on him by any means. But the big thing is, how can he bounce back from the injury, and can he stay on the field? At this moment, I'm going to give a draft grade of a C- for Kinlaw. When you do take a defensive tackle, 14th overall or in the top half of the first round, you do expect more production than what we've seen so far, obviously. So I do think there's potential there. You could argue that maybe he should get a D grade, but I'm actually going to give it a C- because I do think there's potential. And if we revisit this in a couple years, he could actually be a force on the defensive line. But yeah, Kinlaw, C-. With our second pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, first round, 25th overall, we took wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk out of Arizona State. We actually traded up to acquire Brandon Aiyuk. We were at 31, moved up to 25 to get Aiyuk, as there was quite a bit of a run on receivers in the draft, and we got our guy. I think Brandon Aiyuk has been really solid for us. The one kind of blip in the radar, the one kind of bump in the road would have been the opening to the 2021 season, where early on he was just maybe not in favor with Kyle Shanahan. Conflicting reports, whether it was maybe effort in training or what have you. But if we actually look at the start of his 2021 season, got off to a really slow start. First 6 games, he had only 96 yards and 1 touchdown, which is, for a guy of his talent, was just mind-blowing. And I think I even made a video. One of my first videos that I made was, where's Brandon Aiyuk? Where is he at? Because we all could see the talent in his rookie year. He had a very solid rookie year, showed off his route running, showed off his speed, his yak ability. He had that crazy play against the Eagles where he leaped over the guy. And then 2021, he really came on strong at the end of the year. He had some amazing games down the stretch. Also had a really good game against the Cowboys in the playoffs. Was pretty solid too against the Rams in the NFC Championship game. When we look at his career, regular season, he's played in 29 games, almost 1,600 yards, 10 touchdowns receiving. Add in another 100 rushing yards with 2 rushing touchdowns. So is a guy not on Deebo's level in terms of being able to run, but a guy who is a threat on those like end around plays and what have you. But what impresses me so much about Brandon Aiyuk is the fact that his route running, like when I talked about the Dallas game, he just toasted Trayvon Diggs. And Trayvon Diggs, was an all-pro, I believe, this year, largely in part due to all his interceptions. But Brandon Aiyuk took him to school. There's so many plays where Aiyuk just beat him with that route running. And a couple of times Jimmy hit him, and a couple of times Jimmy missed bad. So his stats could have even been bigger in some of those games. The other thing that I like, of course, is his yak, yards after the catch. You only have to look at the final play in overtime against the Cincinnati Bengals, how he was able to stay in bounds, avoid those guys, make a play. And then last but not least, his catching ability is ridiculous. And I think right away to a couple of plays, and funny enough, they were actually both passes from Trey Lance, where in the Houston Texans game right before halftime, Lance threw it to Aiyuk, who was right on the sideline. A Houston defender kind of tipped it, and then Aiyuk still made this incredible catch. Not only that, but in the earlier game, I think it was week 5 against the Arizona Cardinals at Arizona, it was like a 3rd and short, and Lance just threw a bullet, and with the defender draped all over him, Aiyuk made a really nice catch for a first down, which is not an easy thing to do, but he has it all. I think the only thing that's missing is I think there could be more production. Obviously, the lack of play time early in 2021 affects that. In 2020, we were trotting out, I think we had 3 or 4 different quarterbacks play, Jimmy, Beathard, and Mullins. So that was just very difficult, especially for a rookie receiver coming into a complex offense. But Deebo, obviously, last season had a huge season. I think 2022 could be a major year for Brandon Aiyuk. We know how much defenses are going to focus in on Deebo and, of course, George Kittle. So this is going to be a great year, I think, for Brandon Aiyuk to excel, to potentially be a Pro Bowler, should eclipse over 1,000 yards with the big arm from Trey Lance. And it's going to be so important for him to keep improving his route running because he's going to get a lot of one-on-one looks from opposing defense. So big fan of Brandon Aiyuk. I think right now I'm giving him a B+. I would give him an A if there was just a little bit more production right there. But I think, man, this guy and Deebo and Kittle, that's just like a trifecta of receivers that I think is going to terrorize defenses, especially with a guy like Trey Lance at quarterback. The 49ers' 3rd pick of the 2020 draft wasn't all the way until the 5th round, where we took Colton McKivitz, offensive lineman from West Virginia, through various trades, trading up to get Aiyuk. We actually in 2019 traded for Emmanuel Sanders from the Denver Broncos. That's kind of where a lot of those middle round picks went to. But eventually we took Colton McKivitz, and I think overall it's been a very solid pick. It's one of those things where once you get into those 5th, 6th, and 7th rounds, it's really a crapshoot, and it's really, you just have to choose a guy who you can see playing in your system and whatnot. And Colton McKivitz, I think, has been okay. He actually played 27% of the offensive snaps in 2020. So in his rookie year, he was able to get some play time. That was through, of course, a number of injuries that we had. Overall, his play time decreased significantly in 2021, only 6.4% of the snaps. And that was basically, they all came in that game against the Rams week 18, where you have to say, he played really solid. Now, of course, he did give up a sack to Von Miller near the end of the game in the 4th quarter with about 2 minutes or so to go, which is not ideal. But look, we're talking Von Miller, who's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer who makes a lot of offensive tackles look bad. But throughout the game, all before that, we didn't really hear his name called. So that's obviously a good thing for a number of reasons. Obviously, he's not getting beat, and then obviously he's not giving up a bunch of flags, whether it's holding or anything like that. I can't remember if he got flagged during the game. I don't think so, but I could be wrong on that. But you have to say, to come into a situation like that where Trent Williams was unable to go that week and he came in and then really helped the team, especially later in the game, but all throughout the game he was solid. So when you come to a 5th round pick, if you can get a very solid depth piece on the offensive line, I'm going to chalk that up as a win. So for Colton McKivitz, I'm actually going to give it a C+, just because I do think moving forward he could become a guy where we rely on should either of our tackles get hurt, and he can come in and be serviceable. So with our 4th pick in the 2020 draft, it was in the 6th round, number 190 overall, out of Georgia. It was tight end Charlie Woerner. Now, Charlie Woerner, the first thing that you tend to look at when it comes to offensive skill positions is their stats. And if you look at his stats, you would say that he has been incredibly underwhelming, to say the least. Even for a 6th round pick, in 2 years he just has 10 catches for 88 yards, which is not going to amaze anybody. And yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Here's the thing which actually does impress me though about Charlie Woerner. 2021, he played on 23% of the offensive snaps. So, to be out there for a quarter of the plays, clearly he has some value. He's really, really solid and kind of known for his blocking. And then maybe once in every 2 or 3 games, he'll get that catch, maybe for like 9 or 10 yards to pick up a first down. So I do think there's value there. As a 6th round pick, it's going to be easy to compare him to a guy like Kittle, who he took in the 5th round, who is now developed into arguably the best tight end in football. And it's kind of unfair to expect that from anyone. And I don't think Niner fans are really expecting Woerner to be the next George Kittle, but maybe we'd like to see a little bit more production in the pass game. But overall, I think the Niners just have an offense that has so many weapons elsewhere that we don't really need Woerner to be that guy. If he can come in, if he can do a good job blocking, whether it's in the run game, in the pass game, and then have a key catch once every 2, 3, 4 games, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to give this a C grade because overall, he hasn't put up like big time numbers, but I think he's been very solid, someone who you can rely on for blocking, catch here and there. And then also he is a pretty solid special teams. He's actually played 74% of the snaps on special teams, so then he also adds value there. So I'll give a C grade for Charlie Woerner, and I think could be a solid depth piece moving forward. With the 49ers' last, but certainly not least pick in the 2020 draft, we selected wide receiver Jauan Jennings from Tennessee, 7th round, 217 overall. I think Jauan is a guy who is very quickly becoming a fan favorite of the 49ers with his big-time plays, his infectious personality, and just how outgoing he is. And it's just great to see guys like that on the sidelines who just play with so much energy and passion. When I think of Jauan Jennings, I think of a guy who started out very slow in his career. He missed the entire 2020 season with injury. But later on in 2021, he's the guy who was just making big play after big play after big play. When you look at the stats, they actually reflect this too. So overall, the first thing might not pop out at you. It's 282 receiving yards in the regular season, which is nothing to write home about. That's like wide receiver number 4 kind of numbers. But he did have 5 touchdowns. Not only that, he had 15 first downs. So in 24 catches, 20 of those catches went either for first downs or they went for touchdowns, which is just an crazy thing to think about when you look at the percentages of just how much of his catches were incredibly important for the team. I think of Jauan, and again, I just think of third down threat and red zone threat. I look back at the game week 18 against the Rams. So he had the big touchdown at the end of the game to tie it up, to ultimately send it to overtime. But also, if you remember, Deebo Samuel threw a touchdown pass, and that went to Jauan Jennings. Also, earlier in the year, week 2 at Philadelphia, Jauan Jennings has a touchdown in the red zone against Minnesota in that game where we beat the Vikings. Touchdown in the red zone. So he was just a guy who came up in big clutch moments. Not only that, let's think back to the overtime game in Cincinnati. He had a big catch in overtime, a nice pass from Jimmy, and an even better catch from Jauan. So I think a guy who's 7th round pick, who I think has so much potential in front of him, has really found a nice spot with the 49ers, being that number 3 receiver, working in the slot. He's a big guy, so if he goes up against those smaller like nickel backs, I think he can really use his size to beat them, but his route running has developed really nicely. And then also after the catch, he's done a really solid job of getting yards after the catch, which is something that is just so essential as part of the Shanahan offense. Now, I'm going to give Jauan Jennings a B+, simply because his rookie year, he didn't really do anything. But I think for a 7th-round pick, when you look at the production and the potential ahead of him, I think it's going to be a really solid pick and one that we're going to be really happy with, and he'll earn himself a nice contract going forward. So that about sums up the 49ers 2020 draft class. Overall, I think it's a very solid draft class that has contributed to a decent degree so far, but actually has potential to really explode moving on. A lot of times people like to look 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and that's going to be something to be really interesting to look at maybe in a year or two to see how these guys are coming along. I'm most interested to see how Javon Kinlaw comes along. Overall, though, I do want to say that John Lynch and the front office, I would give them about a B- because every single guy on here has contributed in some degree so far, and a lot of these guys shown that they have a lot of potential to really make big careers for themselves moving forward too. So that's really awesome to see. We also want to throw in there, JaMycal Hasty was actually an undrafted free agent. So if you look at the rookie class, I think Hasty is someone who's proven to be a solid runner, really good third down back, can also catch the ball and make plays there. So got to be happy with that level of production that we've gotten from the team so far. But overall, with the channel, that's going to do it with this video, guys. I do want to say there's some videos coming up. There's a whole bunch of speculation and talk about Garoppolo and Brady, and I feel like I've kind of covered that somewhat, but I am going to be looking at doing videos starting to focus a little bit more on the draft coming up, looking at some of my favorite prospects, also potential trades that could be coming up for the 49ers, so definitely stick around for that. And again, guys, I want to say thank you to all the new subscribers. Appreciate the support. Let's keep it going. And guys, I'm going to say 2 things at this point. The butt counts, and I'm going to catch y'all on the flip side.